Welcome to A Brief Pause, where we take a moment to cover a variety of pet topics, including health and wellness, grooming, training, new products that may have come out. Today, we're going to talk to Dr. Callie Harris, a veterinarian and a judge on the new ABC show Pooch Perfect. Welcome to the show, Dr. Callie Harris. How are you?
Good. How are you doing, Annie?
Wonderful. It's so excited to have you on. The timing was perfect. I've been hoping to have you on for a long time, but last night was the finale of the amazing show you're on, ABC's Pooch Perfect.
Yes.
Congratulations
Yeah.
for being on the show. How was your experience? How was watching the finale?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, thank you for those kind words. It was such a ride. And for those of your viewers, if you haven't seen Pooch Perfect, you've got to binge watch it on Hulu. It is just a fantastic show. But my experience was amazing, Annie. I mean, think about it. As a veterinarian, getting this opportunity to have a seat at the judges table alongside celebrity groomer Jorge Bendersky and then the queen herself, Lisa Vanderpump, it was truly a dream come true beyond the fact of the amazing talent with those groomers. It was just so much fun.
Yeah, there was some incredible groomers on that show, and I'm sure. Well, we had Jorge on an earlier episode, and he was talking about just how funny Rebel Wilson was, which, duh, I could only imagine
Right.
how much
And
fun.
not
And you
just
guys,
funny, Annie, I'm going to say something that was really interesting about Miss Rebel Wilson. She is hilarious, but she is honestly one of the most professional people that I have encountered. Like, she is about her business in a great way. So that was an aspect that I don't think that a lot of people would be able to appreciate just seeing her in comedic roles. She is the consummate professional, super kind, loved working with her as well.
oh, that's very cool. I guess that helps her be in a lot of things if she's that professional. That you
Mhm.
got to be that professional plus the funny to make it. I would
Right.
assume in these businesses. What was something that surprised you? Because I'm sure this was the most you had ever been around groomers doing their job, especially this kind with the dyeing and the creative grooming all
Yeah.
together. Was there anything that surprised you about seeing all that process?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, creative grooming. Not many people prior to the show, myself included, had a lot of access to it. It is its own subculture. And, what's interesting is that I at least knew that it existed because many years ago, I actually had the privilege of going to a groomer's expo in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And give a presentation on nutrition. That's part of my job with Purina. And that was then where I became exposed to this world of creative grooming and was actually on the floor and saw these competitions that were going on. So I at least had that little bit of background. So fast forward to the actual show, I wasn't super surprised, as far as the dyeing and, how far out some of those designs were. But I think what I was really surprised was just also the expert animal handling that took place as well. So, the artistry, yes, it was there, the dyeing, beautiful, the products were all safe, but just seeing that connection between the groomers and those dogs and goats. I don't want to give anything away, but the animals that they got to groom, they met, a new pet every challenge, and just seeing how they were able to handle that connection so seamlessly was just, it was like music to my ears.
Oh, that's really cool to hear. And, as a groomer, I am thinking about that when exactly would a vet sit down and watch a groomer at that length of time do their job? And it is
Yeah.
so different than what needs to be done in a veterinary practice because you're there to do something health related and do it as safe as possible and sometimes
Mhm.
do it as quickly as possible. So every part of when I used to work in a vet clinic as well, of every part of the handling is completely different. Yeah, I'm sure that was completely different to see. And it is really impressive. That's one of the things that comes along with the job that takes
Mhm.
time and takes subtlety and
Right.
exposure to dogs. It's pretty cool
Yeah.
how amazing the groomers actually are. People always say, "Well, how do you get them to stand for you?" I don't know how to explain it. It's a lot of experience and it's a lot of
Right.
connection with the dog, like you said.
It's a lot of connection. And, this was something that I said during my time on the show as well. And, an opportunity to try and bridge more of that gap between groomers and you mentioned, veterinarians, because we're all in the profession of animal care, pet care, right? Like we all fall under that umbrella, if you will. But I think that also what is really helpful for people to understand, veterinarians included, that groomers are often like that initial first eyes, ears, hands for the patients that show up in my exam room. You think about myself, my background, my clinical background is in emergency medicine. So I'm an ER vet, or that's what I did for many years before I transitioned over into working with Purina. And so I would sometimes just see patients because something happened, they got sick or some sort of traumatic event. But for groomers, especially if you're on a regular schedule, you're putting your hands on these pets frequently. And so you're able to determine if there's a change in their fur coat. You're able to feel if there's a new bump that pops up, or even something with their disposition if they don't seem as energized. I will never forget this story, just talking about a relationship with groomers. I had one of my own personal groomers with my old dog, Mickey the Pomeranian, who lived to be 18 years of age. And I had managed Mickey's medical, care his whole life, right? But towards the end of his life, I knew things were changing. But as his pet parent, it was hard for me to see. And it was my groomer that took me aside after his last grooming, his final grooming of his life, and said, Dr. Callie, I respect you and your medical opinion, but I really think that this may need to be Mickey's final grooming with us. And when she told me that, obviously, insert the tears, but it just carried so much weight because she had been a part of his life frequently too. And so she was able to see something that even his mom couldn't see, who also went to vet school, that was able to share with me quality of life was diminished. So
Oh
very
yeah,
powerful.
that is really hard on us too, by the way. And it is for some reason hyper apparent during the grooming because I've
Yeah,
seen dogs that act still quite normal at home, but
right.
or they get on that grooming table and there's something really obvious to the groomer. I've definitely
Yes.
seen that as well. And it's good that they said something, but it breaks our heart for
Yeah,
sure.
no, you could tell she was very nervous about sharing that with me, but I'll never forget that moment and I'll always appreciate it.
Yeah, it's interesting because sometimes this sounds really crazy, but sometimes you get to where you can even sort of smell the end in their breath
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
thing. And
sure.
you
Yeah,
just
sure.
really get to know these babies and
Yeah,
you can tell
yeah.
and yeah,
It's a
we have a lot of
connection.
connection. Yeah, and we see
Yeah,
them, every 4 to 6 weeks on minimum, so we watch them
right.
for their whole lives, just watching them grow up and
Exactly.
everything. And the other thing that helps
Exactly.
us see down to their skin, which is great, is using those blow dryers that we have because it separates the hair all
Mhm.
over the body.
Yeah,
So you're not trying to pick through it with a comb. It's sort of like,
exactly.
you want to know if they had ticks, we'll tell you in 5 minutes. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Instant.
Yep, we could see every inch of that skin and figure it out for you.
No, I
Um,
love that.
yeah, what a cool experience, and I'm glad that, they were showing some of this process on TV that so few
Yeah.
people get to see, how it works. But the real reason I have you on the show is to talk about, minorities in the vet industry. Time
Mhm.
Magazine, a while back, did an article. I've always found this really interesting because one of the statistics I really enjoy is 55% of veterinarians are people identify as women. So yay
Right.
for us.
Yay for us.
Yay for us. But the other thing was 2% are minorities, or I think specifically Black. And I was really
Yeah.
curious about why
Yeah.
that would be and what you think could be done to um, fix that or encourage. I don't know
Right.
what the right word would be, not fix that, but yeah,
Yeah.
change that and bring those numbers up and encourage
Right.
minorities to get into this field. So
Mhm.
yeah, firstly, why do you think that is to begin with?
Yeah, yeah, that's such a big and important question. And I think a lot of this information really became more apparent during 2020. I mean, there was just so many things that took place last year that really did lift the veil off of truly who we are, the soul of who we are in this country. So many unfortunate, events occurred, with minorities, and so specifically African Americans. So I think when that conversation started happening and there was more of a deeper dive into the vet profession, it was really awesome to see that there was more of an awareness that was being promoted. So I think to answer your question as why, there's multiple factors.
Sure.
Where I would like to start would be the overall just awareness of veterinary medicine as a sustainable career. Okay. And what I mean by that is that representation matters. We hear it, we see it hashtagged, everybody's talking about it, but it truly does when you're trying to encourage anybody, from whatever culture, they really want to see themselves reflected in whatever they're trying to aspire to. And so it's almost like a vicious cycle. If you're a little kid and you've never met an African American veterinarian or a veterinarian of color, then maybe your inspiration to pursue that as a career is going to go out the window. So I think it's just the awareness of the career as a sustainable, opportunity for minorities. I think also number two, and this is kind of a sensitive topic, right? I would also venture to say that being a veterinarian is a bit of a job of privilege, okay? And what I mean by that is that in order to become a vet, you got to go to, undergrad, go to college, get your degree, then apply to vet school. You might not get accepted the first time, right? So keep applying, have the appropriate grades to get in there. And then you do get into vet school and you have this 4-year program in order for you to get, a doctor of veterinary medicine that's going to cost a lot of money. And then after you do all of that and you pursue, a career as a veterinarian, the salary may not truly reflect all the investment now that you have placed into becoming a veterinarian. And so from a minority standpoint, especially for some of us first generation college goers or first generation, I'm the first doctor in the family, we do have to take a step back and say, if I'm going to make this decision to try and change the trajectory of my family or try to change the trajectory of, whatever's going on in my community, I want to make sure that it counts. And when you look at the investment and then the salary that you may obtain afterwards, for some, it's just not worth it. And you can say, I love animals, and you can say, I just want to work with Fido and Felix and whomever, but it truly can become a career of privilege because not everybody can just do something that they're passionate about. They have to look at how it's going to put food on the table, pay back those student loans, really change the trajectory of their family. So I think veterinary medicine is a career of privilege. And then last, I guess my final point would be just that, I think that if we can try and encourage, higher education as a whole for any marginalized group, any underrepresented group, I think that that will also factor into more people looking at veterinary medicine as a profession too.
Do you think there's also a lack of veterinary practices in heavily minority neighborhoods? Is that a thing?
Yeah, yeah. So I think that you actually make an excellent point, Annie, when we're talking about just animal welfare and care in general. That is something that I know a lot of organizations are taking a deeper dive into how we can bring veterinary medicine and veterinary care for all pets, not just affluent pets, not just pets in the suburbs, but also in, more what would be considered urban environments. I do know, again, several companies that are doing a little bit more market study research into that and figuring out if that would be a benefit. And my personal opinion is yes. I mean, if you bring something into somebody's community to where now, again, you have more exposure to veterinarians, whether they're, minorities or not, at least you have that exposure and that experience and that accessibility, if you will. So I think that's an excellent vibe.
Next, are you excited to be on Pooch Perfect and potentially use that as a platform to be a role model and encourage people and these communities that, well, like you said, it's now front facing. They can now look
Mhm.
to someone else that's done that. And do you
Yeah.
expect that to be the case?
Annie, that has probably been one of the most, I would say, just enriching component of being on Pooch Perfect. Besides working with all the phenomenal groomers and obviously working with the dogs and the hosts and the judges, getting the feedback from moms and from dads of, kids that are enjoying the show and hearing that reflected, that excitement and seeing somebody like myself on such a large stage. One of the sweetest compliments that I got, actually, I was able to FaceTime with this young boy. One of the sweetest compliments I got was that I just love, seeing you on television. It makes me feel like I can do anything. And so it is absolutely heartwarming. It gives me this additional sense of responsibility, and I want that to be reflected more. This is almost like the tip of the iceberg for me. I want to be able to positively influence whomever wants to be influenced. And it's not even just, obviously people, minorities, black kids, brown kids, marginalized kids, underrepresented children. Obviously that's an arena that I'm going to have a huge passion for, but I also want to inspire anybody that takes a look at me, and maybe it's a white kid that's never seen a black veterinarian. I think it goes both ways. It's not just about promoting, within our own groups, but it's also creating allyship and connections beyond our communities. So all the above. I'm so happy that anybody would consider me as a role model for sure.
Well, that's good because I know, that sounds like a lot of pressure, right? But you're right. You don't have to just be a role model for people of color, but that's pretty exciting for young kids in general to see a veterinarian on primetime TV and doing something really fun, right? And
Yeah.
remembering that this can be fun, and you can have different aspects maybe to the career than just maybe looking
Yes.
at that salary and getting discouraged.
Yes. No, that's a huge point as well, Annie, because, that's something that I try to encourage even my vet students. So part of my role, I work for Purina and I do a lot of education and nutrition training for the company. And so I provide technical support for cells in my region, right? But then I also engage at the university level. So I have 4 vet schools that I connect with here. I'm located in Atlanta. And so my schools that I manage are UGA, Tuskegee, which is my alma mater, Auburn, and LSU. And one of the most favorite conversations that I have with my vet students are careers or alternate careers in veterinary medicine. I think many people, suspect that when you go to vet school, you're automatically going to get out and work in a small animal practice, or maybe you're going to do large animal. But a lot of people don't realize that there's so many opportunities in industry, in media, in nonprofit scenarios, nonprofit organizations. So I really love to showcase that and demonstrate that to my vet students as well. And they've actually gotten a huge kick out of seeing their college manager, that's what I'm referred to, on a television show judging a grooming competition. They're like, that is bananas.
Yeah, and I really, it's like we said before, I'm so excited to see the vets and groomers come together. And I think that there should be more of that. And I also think there should definitely be more dogs on TV. Whoever the powers that be are
Duh,
listening, dogs on
right?
TV. Let's keep doing that.
Hello. I mean, who doesn't want to see dogs on TV? I mean, that's another huge initiative of mine, is just promoting awareness of the human animal bond, the benefit, that mutually beneficial relationship between man and beast, essentially. And there's just been so many studies, so many demonstrations of how that positive impact of having a pet in your life can translate to longevity, to decrease in morbidity or illness. It reduces depression. So there's just you can't say it enough, Annie. Like, I'm with you. We need more dogs on TV. We need more animals. We just need to promote that human animal bond for sure.
One last thing before we go. we have the professional right in front of us, and this topic is always a hot one. And so I want to cover it as many times as I can so as many people can hear it as
Yep.
possible.
Do
Can
it.
you please explain that creative grooming and the dog dies and the grooming process is safe and the animal is okay?
Yes. So where I always like to start is that groomers are dog lovers. I mean, I feel like that's a no-brainer, but the groomers that I was able to meet and work with, not only on ABC's Pooch Perfect, but also the groomers that I work with, here locally, we all share the same passion for pets, right? So it always starts at the top, the love and the passion for pets. And so safety is always going to be the number one priority. And that was key for a show like Pooch Perfect. Everything that was done on Pooch Perfect, all the grooms, all the challenges, all the products that were used went through a pretty heavy vetting process. And so the companies that we worked with, as far as the dyes or the shampoos or just any of the products, all were considered non toxic and safe for those pets. Something else that I want to mention too about all the dogs that were being groomed is that they were also heavily vetted to be part of the show. This was not just a scenario where, producers went out and found some dogs running down the street and said, come on, let's be on this grooming show. These were dogs that were used to being groomed, that were used to social interaction, that enjoyed meeting new people. That was so important to make sure that not just the dyes or the products or the cuts or what have you, we wanted the entire experience to be enriching for those pets. And so, in order for that to take place, you have to have the right pet that is going to be able to, enjoy being in the spotlight. So, I think that's a big aspect of also the pets that were used or the pets that were groomed during Pooch Perfect. They enjoyed it.
Yeah, for sure. I think everyone knows that dog that can't seem to get enough love and petting and everything else. Those dogs are perfect for this because they're just being touched and doted on the entire time.
Yes.
And that's
Yes.
all it is light touching and doting
Right.
on, especially
Well,
those
and
dyes are
something else,
just
I even had to share this with some of my family members and friends that, again, we've already talked about this before, where creative grooming has its own, just a small community, right? Most of us didn't have this major access to it. And so when even people within my circle or my camp saw, the colors and the glitz and the glam, it was a bit like, shocking, right? And so even when I had those conversations with family members, I had to remind them that what we're seeing is not what the pet is experiencing. For them, they're not really recognizing that maybe they went from a dog to a flamingo. What they remember is the pets, to your point, being loved, giving the positive reinforcement with the treat. So, it's an opportunity to educate people on again, the entire industry of grooming.
yeah, this isn't much more to them than a normal grooming. They can't tell that you
Right,
used a dye instead of a normal shampoo or that you
right.
cut them into a square instead of a circle. You know, it doesn't
Yeah.
it's yeah,
The
they just
shapes challenge was very important, Annie. Okay.
it is hard. What they do is really, really hard. Where can people find you online or anything about you or Pooch Perfect?
Yeah. So I would love for your viewers to check me out on Instagram. My handle is Dr. Callie H. So really simple to find. I love the engagement and the interaction. I'm also on Facebook too, and you can find me as Callie Harris Foley is my married name. Dr. Callie Harris is my professional name. So, with that being said, yeah, just hit me up on the socials. I love the interaction.
Well, thank you so, so much for coming on the show and giving us a piece of your mind. I hope to have you on in the future, and I can't wait to see what else you're going to do.
Thank you so much, Annie. This was truly my pleasure, and I would love to come back. And thank you for your support. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening and follow us for more wherever you get your podcasts. Also, check us out on Instagram at A Brief Pause.